Greetings to you, Crocodile Army. I hope you voted last week, and if you didn't vote, I hope you do next time. I realize that some people, like Russell Brand, are under the jaw-dropping delusion that somehow not voting is going to bring you the candidates you want. The reality is that there will always be at least two parties in our current political system, and if you make the party that is the furthest from your ideals suffer enough, they'll change their platform and add ideas that voters will actually vote for, and the competition will continue to push both of them in the direction of voter preference. It's the basic survival of the fittest principle from evolution, which many politicians don't even accept. I've sometimes even heard that not voting will somehow bring the authorities to their knees, but I think most people are too smart to adhere to that little nugget of not exactly wisdom. Speaking of questionable wisdom that I hear sometimes, but Zaunstar, why bother voting? The two parties are exactly the same. If you've been paying even the slightest bit of attention to politics, you know they're not the same. If they actually agreed on anything, they might actually get some things accomplished, and it's been a long time since I've seen anything accomplished on the federal level. To suggest they're in cahoots is to engage in a conspiracy theory of a complexity never before seen in human history. Never automatically attribute to collusion what can be better explained by incompetence and self-interest. The only way they could be the same to anyone is if all the issues you care about are not being addressed or supported by either party. Given the array of economic, social, and foreign policy issues being argued about, if you can't even find one of them that you care about enough to bother voting, then I'd like to encourage you to care a little bit more about some of the issues we face as a nation. Listening to political hipsters blather on about how all politicians are the same is intellectually lazy as well as demonstrably false, so don't fall into that trap. This is the same thinking that results in creationists controlling House and Senate science committees. There are actually measurable consequences when this happens. In this election, there were a few interesting things that happened. First, establishment Republicans largely beat back the Tea Party challengers who were trying to unseat incumbent Republicans in the primaries. There had been several big-name Republicans unseated in recent elections, and a lot of those Tea Partiers lost in the general election in seats where the establishment Republican would have likely won easily. In 2012, there were Senate candidates who had talked about witchcraft and who thought that rape wouldn't lead to pregnancy if a woman decided that her reproductive system were similar to that of a duck and other such nonsense. That had an effect on some Senate races, and probably some effect on the presidential race. This time, Republican establishment figures made sure that very few of them were defeated in the primaries, with House Majority Leader Eric Cantor being one of the only big names to fall. Don't shed any tears for poor Eric, though. He landed a $3.4 million a year deal to work for an investment bank. This election loss was a combination of factors for Democrats. In 2008, when Obama was first elected president, the economy was in the tank, we had a lot more soldiers in harm's way than we do today, and everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. George W. Bush's approval ratings were somewhere in the 20s, which is probably around the same percentage of Americans who think Obama's a Muslim. I suspect that's not entirely a coincidence. Republicans did very badly in that election, as they should have given their track record, but it produced some senators who were vulnerable 6 years later when that tailwind turned to a headwind. Democrats who also ran away from Obama's record did so as if the economy were worse than 2008, which it clearly isn't, and even though his approval ratings are in the low 40s, they're much higher than W's were. And when those who aren't paying much attention to politics see a party turn on itself, they'll assume they did something terrible and they'll get beaten. Anyway, I need to go so I can start loading up on carbs now. That drinking game based on Obamacare repeal attempts is going to be brutal.